I am speaking with Stan Gatto, and we are discussing the mentoring.
Work that's gone on in AHE, is that fair to
Thank
say?
you. Yes, that is fair to say.
Okay, good.
Could you tell us a little bit about what is actually happening in the planning phases and what your understanding of where this might go and where you've been and just the process?
Okay, sure. So in AHE, we've been working on and thinking about mentoring for a long time. And I mean, we've recognized this as a need since I've been here, certainly. Um, Now, the challenge is that, well, everyone has acknowledged the need for mentoring. It's kind of like putting the bell around the cat's neck, you know. Everyone acknowledges it's a good idea. Now, okay, who's going to do it? So that's always been the challenge that we've run into, you know, year after year. Um, about well, exactly 2 summers ago, I taught a seminar on mentoring, where the class we studied theories and best practices in mentoring, and the goal was to come up with recommendations for the program, for AHE, to actually implement something. And this actually generated a lot of excitement. We had, wow, I think we had maybe 18 students, you know, in the summer class, which is pretty remarkable for an elective. You know, there's a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm. So one of the things that we did was to design a needs assessment, and we this included doing a survey and interviews with current students and alum. I mean, okay, admittedly the sample size was kind of small. I think the total sample size was under 40. But I mean, it's, you know, something is better than nothing.
That's a pretty good number of
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So we got the data and analyzed it, and just about killed us because it was like really labor intensive.
I bet.
But we actually came up with useful information. And what we found, well, first of all, we determined that people do in fact want mentoring guidance, and we also found that that a lot of that guidance, what people were asking for, had to do with guidance in their professional areas, and we determined that this had a lot to do with people's professional trajectories, and by that I mean where people are coming from and where they're going. And so we came up in analyzing the quantitative and qualitative data. We identified certain trajectories that are most common in the AHE program. So, for instance, people going from non-educational areas into other non-educational areas. Like if they want to advance, right now they're a trainer and they want to move up the corporate ladder to, you know, become a manager, for instance. That'd be non-ed to non-ed. There are a fair number of people who are education to education. So they're currently working as a, you know, in education administration, you know, in support services, and they want to become a director or a dean or something. Okay, so that's another common trajectory. Non-education to education. So people who are working outside of higher education and they want to move in. Or education to non-education. People are currently working in higher ed and they want to get out. They want to go to the private sector or go to nonprofit.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the most common trajectories tended to be kind of within your field. You know, like, and you'd kind of expect that, right? So like people are already in training, they want to go into some other position in training, or they're already in education, they want to go into some other area of education. But that didn't necessarily mean that that was the greatest area of need. The greatest area of need was when people were crossing between education and non-education.
Okay, interesting.
Which kind of makes sense. So let's say you're working outside of higher ed and you want to move into higher ed. And by the way, that was a real common trajectory. That also causes a certain amount of dissonance because you're crossing boundaries. You've been working in the corporate sector for 10 years, and then you're going to move into higher education. Oh my God, a whole new world. New concepts, new vocabulary. That's where people go, wow, I need some help. Or conversely, you're working in education, you've been working in student services for 10 years, and now you want to go into nonprofits. It's kind of discombobulating. So you would tend to want some help there. So it's not just about frequency, it's not just about how many people are going in these various directions, but also the magnitude of need.
So is it fair to say then, from what you're saying, that it had less to do with their coursework and more about, as you mentioned, the professional transition? I mean, was it within
in
the
part,
was
in
it-
part,
Okay.
because everyone gets discombobulated at the very beginning.
Oh,
It's
yes.
like, oh my God, this is brand new. Wow, they're using a whole new vocabulary.
Right.
Okay,
That's
so
true.
everyone needs a little boost at the very beginning.
Okay.
But beyond that, it has more to do with people's professional orientations and their trajectories.
So, how do you see this program, or what are some of the ideas that are being generated about the implementation? I know you may not be there yet, but I'm interested in hearing what else you've discovered, and how, whether that's something that happens within the confines of the university here, or if it's something that actually bleeds out into the community and into multiple workplaces. If there's a
okay.
aspect of that.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so let me back up here. Another thing that we found in this needs assessment was that there was a range of conceptions, shall we say, in how people were thinking about mentoring, and that their ideas tended to kind of bleed over into the notion of advising. And we started with the assumption that mentoring and advising are not one and the same. Because advising, at least the way we initially assumed, had more to do with kind of the nuts and bolts procedural stuff. How do I register, for classes? How do I use Canvas? What are the best courses to start with, and what are the prereqs? So at least the way that we were analyzing things, we were categorizing those kinds of questions as advising questions, and that we have a structure in place to answer those types of questions, and that was the main reason we developed the HE Student Handbook. So to answer those kinds of questions, those nuts and bolts kinds of programmatic procedural questions. And then we've tried to kind of beef up the website to answer FAQs.
Actually, it's very effective.
So, good to hear that. All right, so we're hoping that those types of online resources will address a lot of these advising kinds of questions. But there's still this need for more sustained mentoring, which is the way we were viewing it beforehand, and as it came out in the data, we came to see mentoring as being more bringing people into a professional / academic culture and kind of helping shepherd them along. So it's dealing with more enduring issues beyond, where's the copier.
All right. Thank you.
Maybe a third thing that we found is that people, especially when they just start out, they don't know what they don't know. They don't necessarily know what they need. And so people might start out thinking that they need to know where the copier is. They need to know how to sign up for classes. They need to know how to use Canvas. You know,
Yeah.
that's my preoccupation right now.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. Those are important things to know.
The emphasis shifts with time and knowledge.
It does to some extent, but and we would want people over time to start, once they've gotten those nuts and bolts things down, to start thinking about more enduring issues. And sometimes,
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Such as?
like, what does it mean to be part of a professional community?
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, what we discussed, you know, in our last meeting. Sometimes people are really on board with that idea. Sometimes it doesn't catch on. So through mentoring, we hoped that we could address that kind of question. You know, like, what does it mean to be part of an academic community? What does it mean to be a scholarly professional? Okay, that's a really important question.
And how do, also how to, in my perspective, a very limited perspective, how can we encourage each other and do our best work and make those kinds of positive changes that are going to improve our practice and student potential, you know, and that's not something one does alone. You do need one. I think we do need a community.
Yeah, I'm glad you're thinking along those lines. Yeah, so this, we agree, and the evidence from the needs assessment supported this. That we do need some sort of structure, some sort of methodology to help people think through these types of issues, and we believe that we could connect this with people's trajectories, with helping people move along those trajectories. So people in the needs assessment asked for support in getting connected with practicing professionals, for instance. So if they're not already working in the field of student affairs, you know, they are interested in you know, making connections with people who, you know, who are veterans in that area. Or if they want to become trainers and they're not trainers right now, they would like to get hooked up with trainers. And the good news there is that we have a deep pool of talent. You know, people alumni who are working in the field, and, you know, current students who are, you know, have been working for decades in their field. You know, these, you know, great resources.
Exactly, that's the word that came to my mind too.
Yes.
To be a resource for
Yes.
each other is important.
And in general, the even better news is that a lot of these folks are, you know, willing and enthusiastic to share their expertise. You know, and they recognize that new people who are coming in, you know, have their own assets. You know, they have a fresh perspective. They've got an enthusiasm, and they have a willingness to consider new things. So, I mean, you know, it flows both ways. It's not just, you know, the old timers experiencing the new, giving knowledge to the newbies. It's really a two-way exchange.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in order to keep growing in one's field, you do need that interchange of someone else's perspective and critical analysis of you know, of areas of interest and just sharing that, and that moves you forward in a way that you can't move forward sometimes on your own accord.
Yes. So here's a central challenge. So we recognize people are asking for support in their particular professional interest areas, which is great. We want to support that. At the same time, we don't want to segregate people off into professional enclaves. So we don't want to say, for the trainers, you could only talk to trainers, and that's it. And you guys over here, you guys are the college instructors. You could only talk to college instructors. That sort of balkanization just does not suit our program, because the strength of AHE is its multidisciplinary structure. I mean, we benefit by having people talk across professional areas. It's very enriching. So how can we support people in their specific professional trajectories, and at the same time have a dialogue across disciplines? That's the challenge.
And I think that's actually and it fits into the bigger picture of the global perspective and interdisciplinary format of the internet, and of the fact that information isn't just isolated to a specific area. That actually that cross pollination is really an exciting place to be, and important. So I really appreciate that.
So
any concluding thoughts or?
So we're thinking that GSAC will be an important facilitator of making these kinds of connections, because we recognize that this is going to happen outside of class. Well, okay, let me take that back. What we're thinking is that GSAC will facilitate extracurricular work that will allow people to connect, people who have common interests, allowing them to kind of connect with each other and work on joint projects. And that in doing that sort of collaboration, you will automatically have a kind of joint mentor-mentee relationship. And okay, so this links back to the coursework. Eventually, we want to connect coursework with this extracurricular work.
That would be great.
Yeah. So for instance, we asked people from the 554 Foundations class to facilitate a workshop on community building. Okay, so they got credit for that work, and it's working in service to this GSAC project that's moving toward building a mentoring structure.
That would be wonderful to have it integrated into the program in some way like that, because that seems to be one of the issues that people are concerned about fitting extra work into their already busy lives. And that's a way to kind of have it overlap and integrate a little bit.
Eventually, I would like to see participants take on more and more responsibility for, that doesn't necessarily earn credit. That just, you're doing it because it's good for your own professional development, and it's a service to the program and the field. Okay, and that's part of building a professional work ethic.
Agreed.
But at the moment, we're not there yet. We'll just, it is what it is. We acknowledge that, right now, it needs a little jump start, by giving a little incentive. No problem. Happy to help people out and encourage people to participate. And, what we're thinking is that GSAC will plan and organize, a series of meetings where people can connect with like-minded people. So for instance, I know an alum who's really into looking at the Pearson GED test. And, she's really devoted to that project. And I also know that there's some other students who are independently interested in that topic. Wouldn't that be great if Marcia, who's doing her own work as an alum, could speak with a group of current AHE students and other people who are also interested in that topic and go, wow, that's really cool.
That would be great.
so they go and they speak with Marcia, and they decide to somehow collaborate.
Yeah, it makes it more pertinent, and
Yeah.
it makes the learning more interesting.
Yeah.
If it's actually related to what you're actively pursuing or actively interested in.
Yeah, definitely.
It definitely would enrich the process.
So that helps people with their professional trajectories. So people who are, not they're not yet in adult basic ed, but they're interested. They get hooked up with Marcia, and Marcia, they help Marcia with her project, and she in turn acts as a mentor to help them, move into adult basic education. I mean, it's a win-win. And eventually, I'd like to see that sort of work tie back into coursework, where people who are doing interesting joint projects can get credit for that, in their coursework, and they could help the rest of the class make connections between book learning stuff and work out in the field.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so it's
Very exciting.
It's a built-in process of connecting theory to practice.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think the prospect.
I'm very excited about this. I think after all these years, we finally have a viable structure, and that this is, we've got the plan, we've got the research, and we're starting to get people who are interested in this. This is just about to take off, and so you're coming in at a really good time.
That's nice. Yeah, I found the meeting very interesting. I think that I've worked with some of the people that were at the meeting, and it's a fascinating, bright group with lots of great experience, and I think it's an exciting group.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Sure.
Dan. I really appreciate it,
Yeah,
and
my
appreciate
pleasure.
your time
Yeah.
and all this information. Thank you.
All right.